So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Speaking Up for Trees teacher training. So we are delighted to have Jenny, who is a Speakers Trust trainer, with us this afternoon. And first of all, just thank you for being a force for nature. Thank you for all of the things that you are doing in your school to create a healthier future for people and the planet. It's brilliant to see all the things that you've been doing on Club Space. So please do keep posting, sharing the inspiring things you're doing, and helping to motivate other schools and sharing ideas. It's just fantastic to see all the incredible things you're doing. So thank you. So this afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about why RSE matters. I'm going to talk through the competition and how that works, how you can enter. And then I will hand over to Jenny, and Jenny will talk to you about how to support your students, building their speeches, some top tips, some activity ideas, so that you can run the competition in your school and enter the Speaking Up for Trees and Nature competition. So the competition is a brilliant opportunity for your students to find their voice and share their message. I'm sure with all the incredible things that you're doing, your students have something to say. They want to speak up, they want to share their message. So this is a brilliant way for them to do that. There are lots of prizes. Last year we had Go8 vouchers. The prizes this year are TBC, so we will let you know, but I'm sure they will be as amazing as the Go8 vouchers. There are also certificates for all runners-up and your national finalist. And of course, your students will be able to share their speech and their message on a national platform, which is a really great opportunity for them. So the Speaking Up for Trees and Nature competition, there's lots of information on the website, including videos from last year, which will help to inspire your students and give them some ideas for how they might run their speech and what they might say. You can also look at that for top tips on voices and actions and things like that. So that's a really great starting point. There is also a guide on the website that just talks you through how to run the competition in your school. And in that guide, there's the judging form as well for when you're running the competition. So when you run the first stage of competition in your school, you will come up with a top 5. And all of those will get the runners-up certificates. And then you need to do a next round. So that might be in an assembly or with your head teacher, where you will decide your national finalist. And this is the one entry that you submit through the Cognito form on the website to the national competition. And this entry will be the one that is representing your school and may win the Speaking Up for Trees and Nature competition. We'll showcase that video on our website as well. The deadline, very important date, so please put it in your diaries, is 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 7th of June. So you've got lots of time to get ready and prepare your students. The Force for Nature Festival is where you will find out if your student has won the Speaking Up for competition, as well as lots of other awesome activities and other awards that will be announced on this day. And you should just have received your very first invite to this festival, so please do sign up. It's between 1 and 2 p.m. on Wednesday, the 15th of June, and it's an hour long for your students to celebrate being a force for nature and all of the incredible things that they have done this year. So please do sign up. And one of the things that we will be announcing at the festival is the winners of the competition. So I'm now going to pass you over to Jenny, who is going to talk you through all of the exciting things, the reason you're here, how to run the competition in your school and inspire your students to find their voices.
Okay, so yes, I'm one of the trainers that goes into school. So normally you would have a trainer who comes into school and would run the workshop with your support. But obviously not all schools have the opportunity or dates to allow that to happen. So we'd like to make you feel that you're empowered to run that workshop yourself, get the best out of your students so that you can select a really good top 5 and feel really good about that assembly going forward. And then that one person entering the national competition. So how do we start? Well, we start by building RSE skills. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So hopefully it works. Let's try that one first. Fantastic. Everyone, I can see you all and I can see my screen. I'm hoping you can see me too.
Yeah, we can see you.
Excellent. Fabulous. So we all know, especially if you work with young people and your teachers yourselves, obviously, that RSE is a key functional skill. To be good at it increases a child's self-confidence. It can enhance their speaking and listening skills, which is hugely important, not just for this competition, but also in life. It can produce positive mental health. It can build endorphins when you're standing up and you get great applause from the audience, and you can get positive self-identity. So once you start to learn how to share your opinions and give your ideas with confidence, you can really begin to identify with yourself as a confident young person in the world, which is a lovely thing to feel. It helps young people articulate their thoughts and ideas, and we share structures and tips with them in order to do that. So all we're doing is taking the natural ability that all human beings have to communicate, especially primary age children, and we're just going to structure it a little bit for them. It's not very formal, and that's deliberate. And then in terms of this competition, but also in life, it can influence social change. So if you make a positive impact when you stand up and speak, in this case about trees and nature and being a force for nature, you can make a really influential social change on the people around you, and then beyond that classroom to the world outside. And it's a really powerful tool for learning. So it's a really important skill to have. Ideally, depending on your own curriculum and how your day plans, it'd be great if you could spend a whole day running this workshop. If you booked one of us to come in, that is how it would work. So if you can put a day aside to make it work, or you split it in two, and maybe one day you do the first half before lunch, and then later in the week you do the second half. It needs to be flexible. I completely appreciate that with school timetables, but if you could at least give it a whole day in its totality, that would be fantastic, because it really allows the children to benefit the most from it, the most time you give it. So when you start off and you get your pack, which Claire was asking about earlier, Katie, I don't know if you were listening to that bit, you will get a teacher resource pack, and rather fabulously in that pack, which I co-wrote, so hopefully it's good, there is a schedule of the day with the timings, which I think most teachers find really useful. So it tells you each activity in the order that you do it and how long it should take. And that's great. Obviously, like any lesson plan, you'll know yourself, sometimes certain activities grow a little bit and they might not be 20 minutes, they might exceed the 20 minutes, and that's fine. Your experienced teachers don't panic about that. And some activities that we've given 10 minutes for, depending on the group, might take 5. So there's a bit of flexibility within those timings, but they're designed so that you can see how it's structured over a whole day. As well as getting that teacher resource pack, your lovely children in your class will get one of these. So this is the student workbook, which is fabulous. And I've got some slides that replicate what's in the student workbook, and that's what we're going to go through. So you're going to see now what the students get. You don't get this in your teacher resource pack, but you will be sent enough so that you can have one up front as well as you're running the activities. They're written very simply, but they're not at all patronizing. The reason that we keep it simple is because the most valuable voices and input in the room are the children. So we don't want to overstructure things and make it so Speakers Trust fed that everybody comes out as a carbon copy and all the speeches are identical. That's not what we're after. We want people to feel empowered, to be individual and say what they really think about trees and nature. So if you look at the next slide for me. She's there trying to, there we go. This is the structure of the workshop. So you start with the communication triangle. That's the first thing you're going to do. And then you go into the top tips for speaking and listening. We do impromptu speaking, which is just speaking on the spot. We teach them a very basic feedback formula so that they can start learning to deliver feedback to each other and listen for the feedback they're giving. That encourages their listening skills, because if they're all just sitting there waiting for their turn to speak, they might switch off, as I'm sure you could be aware. Then we share some stories. So we do some storytelling, which is really important. And then we help them plan the content of their speech. Then at the end of the day, they will stand up and deliver their speech. And I can't stress enough, if you're in a position to run this for a whole day, it's the best way to do it because of the momentum that is built throughout the day. And it really gets them to that point at that right time. And sometimes if you have a break of a few days between, they can kind of lose that momentum. The nerves can creep back in and they might feel like, oh, I don't want to do it now. So if you can do it over a day, that would be fantastic. And then obviously you have the speaking competition, which Juliet took you through. One of the things that we're encouraging people to do and schools to do with Speak Up for Trees is try and work outside. So obviously, as you're part of the project anyway, you've probably got fabulous outdoor spaces at your schools. And even if you haven't, even if you've got a playground, if you can get the kids out, it's a fantastic thing to do. So when I come to a school, I try to run as much of the workshop as I possibly can outside, weather dependent, obviously, but we have had fantastic weather the last month, so I've been very lucky. And for the communication triangle, which is in the student handbook, it's the first page, so it's the first thing they do. I usually send them off scurrying about outside in your whatever area it is to find 3 things that they can find from nature. It could be a leaf, a little stick, a stone, could be a daisy, it can be anything they can find, and they bring it back and they make their own communication triangle sitting on the floor in front of them. They can do it in pairs, in groups of 3, or you can do it individually depending on the group size. And then when they've got that, we decide where we're going to put the content, the delivery and the structure. And then we have a little discussion about what we think the content of a speech is. So I give them 30 seconds, talk to your partner. What do you think content means? What do you think the content of a speech might be? And then we guide them through. Usually you get a couple of kids that say, is it what we're talking about? Yes, it is. And we talk about topics, what kind of things we might like to talk about, why content is important. You'll get some kids who'll say, you know, should we put some facts in there? Yeah, facts is great. What else could we put in there? We could maybe tell a story. And we start building the idea of a speech isn't just standing up and I say. It's got a lot more content to it than that. So, and they're brilliant kids, you know, they're not stupid. They know once they start discussing, they feed off each other. Delivery, then we talk about delivery. So usually a really nice way to do this is if you can demonstrate, if you can bear it, if you can bear to make a fool of yourself. And if you're a teacher in a primary school, you probably regularly make a fool of yourself, so that's fine. So if you can bear showing them how to do it badly, that really helps. So we can talk about delivery and about how we use our voice and our eye contact and our facial expressions and our gestures. And then I might do some different facial expressions. So I might say, what do you think, what kind of person do you think I am if I walk into a room like this? And the kids kind of say, you know, you don't look very happy. You look a bit sad. So what could I do differently to make everyone in the room think that I'm happy to be here? You could smile. Excellent. So should we all try that? And then we all smile. And then I might say, you know, what do I look like if I stand like this? And I cross my arms and I look really grumpy, and then the kids kind of feed back and they say, you know, things like, you don't look like you want to be here. You look like you're really kind of like, you know, like you're hiding behind your arms, or you want them to identify the bad ways of doing things, because it's a really good way to highlight the good ways, because you can get them to tell you what you look, you know, what you look like and what they think you should look like. So you might say to them then, what should I do with my arms then? What could I do? They might say, well, put them by your sides. Or someone might say, wave them in the air. If they make silly suggestions, do them, because they'll soon see, oh yeah, that's not going to work. Could I do that for a whole minute and a half as I'm talking? What would that feel like for the audience? I'll be really distracting. So they know. So even if you get some silly answers, you can always bring it back to kind of the reality of the situation. And then we talk about structure. And how, you know, if you build something out of Lego, the structure is really important and it needs to be really solid so it lasts. And structure is how we build speeches. It's how we put things together. It's what the beginning looks like and sounds like, what should go in the middle, what's the filling, and what do we say at the end that makes the audience remember our message. And then you can tell them that you'll be sharing a structure with them that's really going to help with that. And that's in the back of their books, because the speech is the last thing they do. So that's how I do content and delivery, because I think it's really important to get the kids involved. One of the activities that I think you could use, certainly with primary children, I've been using it all over the country and it works really well, is you could do body sculpting, which is really lovely. So you get them in pairs and you say, I'm going to give you 30 seconds and I want you to name who's A and who's B. Right, A, I want you to sculpt B. So you can move their arms and legs, you can jiggle their face around, you can tell them how you want them to stand, and I want you to make them stand the way you think they should stand if they're delivering a speech and they want to be remembered. And then you just set them that challenge. Then you go around the gallery, because all the sculptures freeze, and you can have a good look at what everybody's done, and then you swap over and get, so you really get them to start thinking about their bodies and what their bodies are like on stage, and how we make a lot of impression to an audience just with how we look and how we stand. So getting them to actually physically do it if they're primary age works really well. It's a bit of a different kettle of fish with secondary kids. Can't really get them to sculpt each other, but it really works well with primary. So once you've done that activity, you're going to move on to the top tips of public speaking. Again, this is in their book. This is an exact replica of the page in their book. And there are 10 in total. So the first thing I would do is get them into little groups of maybe 3 or 4 and give them 1 tip each. And I'd like them to come up with a definition or explanation of what they think, why they think that tip is important. So they'll have a little discussion with their group. So say they've got project your voice. So why do we think project your voice is important? Then they're going to share that with the rest of the class. So I give them 5 minutes to have a chat. Then we share that with everybody. And then I set them an extra challenge and I say, okay, if I was a big meanie and I said you could only keep 3 of those tips, like a top 3 instead of a top 10, which 3 would your group keep? Now you've heard all the definitions, which 3 would your group keep and why would you keep those 3? So then they have another discussion. And what's really nice about that activity, it's about give and take, negotiation, collaborative learning, because they have to kind of fight their corner and say, I think we should keep this. No, I want to keep this one. And they come up with that collaborative 3. Then they share those 3 with the group. One of the things I do, because I think it's really helpful for the competition, is when they share with the group, I use one of the books. So here's the page here in the book, and I'll just get a pen and I will make a tally every time a tip is mentioned. And then I will give the collective top 3 tips to the group. And then I will say to them, so they're the ones we're going to focus on today. And that works really well for primary because trying to do all 10 in a day can sometimes feel quite overwhelming, especially if you've got shy or low confidence children. So if you've got a top 3 that the whole class agree on, you can say they're the 3 we're going to focus on today. So when we're doing our feedback later and our activities in a minute, we're going to make sure we try and do those top 3. And everyone feels a bit more relieved then because they don't feel like, oh my God, I have to do all 10. I can't do all 10. I can't even remember all 10. So that's quite a nice way to do it. But obviously, you know your children better than I do in your classes. So if you think, oh, actually, they can cope with just trying to have a go at all 10, that's absolutely fine. I'm just giving you different strategies to help you out. After they've done their top tips for public speaking, there's a top tips for listening on the next page, and you can run similar activities with the top tips for listening. And there's a really nice bit at the bottom of the page, which basically you can ask them, why do they think they're a good listener? And they can write it in this box. And that's a really nice one to do. So once they've had a look at the top tips for listening, you can say to them, if you can just write down two reasons why you think you're a good listener. And that really encourages the skill of listening throughout the day, because we can't make this work if the children don't listen to each other. Then you can get them to share those so they know that listening as well as speaking is super important in order to build the confidence in the room. And then we move on to feedback. So the next thing I always take them through is feedback. And again, in the book, which I've got here, you can see they've got space to write feedback. And the formula we use at Speakers Trust is really simple, and we use it for primary, special educational needs and secondary, because it is simple and it's much more effective than trying to overcomplicate feedback. So W, what did they do well? Well, that stands for wonderful in our world. Improve. So what do you think they could do a bit better? And what's nice about them? The best way to deliver feedback in a Speakers Trust workshop is to rely on the top tips for speaking and listening. So they've got those written in their books, and you can say to them, when you're giving your feedback, make sure you choose the top tips. And then you can demonstrate that feedback by saying, so I'm going to imagine that I'm talking to Claire, and Claire's just done an activity, and I will say to Claire, I thought the way you projected your voice was wonderful. I thought you could improve your eye contact. And then one of the things that I think is really nice about you, Claire, is you've got a lovely smile. So you're encouraging the children to use top tips for the wonderful, top tips for the improve, And then the nice is encouraging the children to pay each other a compliment. That's really important. I don't think there's enough compliments in life, and it's lovely to be able to give people some positivity. And that compliment can range from, and I have heard these in the workplace, that compliment can range from, she's got great shoes, or I love her hair, she always has the best packed lunch. It can be anything like that. It doesn't matter. That's just their free rein to pay someone a compliment in the room. And that's really good, because it's all about building self-esteem, and paying people compliments makes them feel good. It also makes you feel good when you make someone smile. It's quite a nice thing to do. So that's a lovely thing to be able to do. And then after we've done our feedback and explained how it's going to work, we then do impromptu speaking. So impromptu speaking is just speaking on the spot. And the easiest way to do this, and I still would be, I would still probably be outside for all of this, because it works really nicely outside. You can either sit in a circle and do it, or you can split them off into little groups and they can wander about while they're doing it, and that's fine. If you're going to be inside, that's not a problem either. But if you are going to do this workshop inside, push all the desks in your room aside and take that learning environment out of the equation, and just put your chairs in a semicircle so they've got lots of space to move about and walk about, because it is really important that they learn to kind of engage with what it feels like to stand and walk and deliver on stage, with, you know, using their gestures and walking about and handling their bodies in that space. That's really important. So speaking on the spot, the best way to do speaking on the spot is to demonstrate it. Obviously, that's the first thing to do. So in their books, they have a list of questions, which is brilliant. So these questions were put together by me and Hilary, and they're all linked to nature, all linked to the environment, all linked to forces of nature and speaking up for trees. So they're all directly engaged with that topic. If you want to add extra topic questions, you absolutely can. They're just the ones to kick you off, so that you're not kind of flailing about thinking, what can we ask them? Or what can they ask each other? And then you take them through the structure. So there's a structure for speaking on the spot that will really help them. But the most important thing about speaking on the spot is don't start until you're ready. So use that pause at the beginning. That's what I always say to them. Take a breath, take a pause, think about the question, repeat the question if you need to. Don't start talking till you're ready, because it's much better to have a kind of solid answer than to start talking and then change your mind and apologize and go back and do it all again, because it knocks their confidence. So it's much better if they just take a bit of time at the beginning. We use prep, but I would, for primary, I would take example out of it, and I would change the second one to an E for explain and use PEP, because I think it works so much better. So it's broken down like this. It's very simple. And actually, it's interesting because in their books, in the primary books, it is PEP. They've got PEP in the primary books. So PEP is broken down like this: position. So this is what I think, or this is what I'd like to do, or this is how I feel. Explain. So that's just the why. I feel like that because. I would do that because. I think that because. And then restate the position. And that's why I would do this. And that's why I think this. And that's why that is my favorite tree. So you're just helping them with a bit of structure, so they've got an idea of how to deliver an answer. So it would be really great. I think Katie might still be cooking dinner, but it'd be lovely, Claire, if I could ask you a question and you could just have a little go.
Sorry, I am here. I am listening.
Hi.
As best I can.
Hi.
I'm not a teacher. I'm actually a mum, and I'm doing my best to kind of field everything going on. So I'm just I'm taking all notes, and I'm going to relay it back to school. So thanks very much.
Don't panic, Katie, because it is being recorded. So do the best you can. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Good mum, volunteering to do that. So very simple question, Claire, but the reason I'm going to ask you to demonstrate it is so that you can see how easy it is. And then all you're going to do is give me your position, explain why, and then restate your position. And we're just encouraging the children to voice their opinions at this point. We don't set any time limit on it. They can waffle on for a bit if they want. It can be 15 seconds long. It doesn't matter to me. It's about hearing themselves speak out loud and give an opinion. So I'm going to ask you a question. And the question I'm going to ask you is, Oh, I'll ask you a nice simple one. What is your favourite tree and why?
Ooh. I think my favourite tree is probably, it's got to be any fruit tree really. Why? The why is because of the what it provides. I like to see the blossom on it first, and then obviously you can go and pick the fruits. So I think that's the main reason that I like, because it actually provides you with something as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you. Juliet, can I ask you one? Will you do a demo for us?
Yeah, go for it.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to ask Juliet a harder one.
Thanks.
So, Juliet, why do you think trees are good for our health and well-being?
I think trees are good for our health and well-being because if you have ever spent any time around trees, walking in the woods or climbing a tree or sitting under a tree reading a book, I'm sure you have felt how calm and happy you feel after spending that time around trees. It doesn't matter what you're doing around the trees, whether you're going for a bike ride or going for a run, whatever it is, I'm sure you have all felt it, but you just feel calm and you just feel happier seeing all those leaves and blossoms and apples, and if you're in a orchard around you. So that's why I think trees are so good for our health and well-being.
Lovely, thank you very much. So obviously, you know, you're adults, but it is a very simple structure, which is really nice because you know what we're asking of you. We're asking you to say, I think this because this, and that's why I think this. And it just makes it so much easier. And there will be children who will be able to extend their answer and give quite detailed explanations. And there will be children who can just about manage to put together a very simple explanation, which could be because of confidence, or it could be because of literacy levels. But this structure works for everybody, and that's why it's really nice. And as I said, the example questions are in the book, but there are also example questions in the teacher resource pack. Just remembered that. So you'll have some extra ones as well up your sleeve, which they won't have in their book if you really want to put them on the spot. So that's quite a nice thing to have, which is good. After I've done that, then what I would do, which isn't in any of the packs, but I'll just give you these ones for free, is I would play a couple of games. So the first game I would play, I'm going to get the thing that I use so you can see it. This isn't the exact thing that I use. I'm just getting my bag of tree workshops. I'll just take 2 out because I actually got 7.
I love that you've got a bag of goodies there.
I've got a bag of goodies. So I've got about 30 of these bamboo canes, mainly because I run a youth theatre, so I've got all this stuff. But you don't have to use these. I have just used sticks, a stick that you find outside at a school when I've forgotten to bring this with me. And then I think after impromptu speaking, because they've given each other some feedback after that in their groups, and impromptu speaking is best done in little groups of 3 or 4. Because the whole workshop is designed so they don't really speak in front of the whole class until after impromptu speaking. So you're building their confidence, making the audiences a little bit bigger and a little bit more secure in how they are. So what you could do after impromptu speaking before you play the game is you could say, would anyone like to share their answer with the whole class? Did anyone hear a great answer that they think everyone should hear? And then you might get a few who stand up and say in front of the whole class, and they don't have to come to the front. They can just stand up where they are. It makes it much easier. And then I would play This Is Not a Stick. So we get a stick and then we stand in a big circle, and this stick can be absolutely anything you want it to be, but it cannot be a stick. So then they walk into the center of the circle and they take the stick from the person in the middle and they say, this is not a stick, it's a special thing for picking your nose. Or this is not a stick, it's a flute. This is not a stick, it's a lightsaber. So the 2 rules are these. So the first rule is that you can't come in with a partner, you have to come in on your own. So this will be, without them realizing it, they're speaking in front of the whole class, but they're playing a game. It's a really good idea if you go first. And the other rule is that they're not allowed to repeat any ideas, because sometimes you might get 15 boys who all say this is a sword. So if you say you can't repeat an idea, if someone beats you, you're going to have to think quickly. So have a couple of ideas in your head of what this stick can be. Okay. And that's what I play with them. And then I take these other things out of my bag. And these are really pretty stones. And I've got 7 of them. They're all different, and they're from like various trips around the coastline in my lifetime. And I just collect stones. So I've just got all these stones. And then I get these out and I say, okay, so if that's not a stick, then what are these? I've got 7 of these. What could these be? And they kind of have a little chat about what they think they can be. And then I say, okay, if you all sit down, I'm going to tell you what these are. They're very, very special. So these stones are story stones. And if you hold the story stone, you have the power to make sure everyone in the room is listening to you. So that's the first rule. So anyone holding the stone is the only person allowed to speak, and everybody else has to be quiet. So then I'll do a little exercise with them where we practice that technique. So we'll pass a stone around the circle, and they can stand up and cross the circle if they want and give it to somebody else. And the thing that I ask them to do is I say, you don't have to tell a story, because we're just going to practice being quiet when someone's got the stone. So all I want you to do is tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me a bit about who you are. Tell me what you like to eat. Tell me what you had for dinner last night. Tell me what you're doing at the weekend. Tell me what your favourite subject is. Doesn't matter what you say, you don't have to tell a story. And then we'll pass the stone around, and they get used to, at the beginning, there'll be a little bubble of chatter. And then when they get used to the idea of being quiet when someone's got the stone, then I'll break them into groups, and we'll start on storytelling. So I'll get them to go into, the groups get bigger. So for this, I would use groups of 6 or 7, because you want their audience to get slightly bigger. And they'll still have their books with them, and you'll get them to turn to page 9 in their books, because we're going to create our own stories, and we're going to share them using the magic story stones. And on page 9, they've got a story builder. So there's a little structure to help them. And what they'll love about the structure is, which I always say first of all, say, what's the first thing you notice about the page you've got to write your story on? And straight away you'll get someone who goes, there's no room to write anything. And I'll say, oh no, there's no room to write anything. Why do you think that might be? Why do you think we don't want you to write very much? I don't know. Why don't you want us to write? Well, because we're not reading, are we? We're just going to tell stories. So what do you think you should write? Oh, the things that will help us remember. So I just want you to write down the things that will help you remember the story. Because if you're telling a story about something you know about, you're not going to need to write it down. You're not going to need very much help to remember it. And we don't want you to read your stories out. We just want you to hold the story stone and tell us a story. And then I'll say to help you, I'm going to tell you a story. And then I usually tell them a story. And this story, there's a couple of rules for storytelling. So the first thing is you need to encourage them to tell a true story. And the second thing is the story needs to be about nature or have taken place somewhere where nature is involved. And the story that I usually tell is set in a playground, because I'm really aware of the fact that not all children have access to, amazing oceans and rolling beaches or going on skiing holidays or, all that kind of thing. So I try and keep my story really simple so that the children that don't have that kind of background still feel, that being in a playground in a park with trees is being in nature, is being outside. I would encourage the teacher in the room at this point to share a story first. I think that's really important. And the story only needs to be 60 to 90 seconds long. It doesn't have to be very long. So to help you out, I'm going to tell you the story that I usually tell the kids so that you know. So I've got the magic story stones, so you'll have to listen to me. When I was 6 years old, my dad used to take me to the play park every Saturday. And I loved Saturday at the play park with my dad because my parents didn't live together and it was my chance to see my dad. And when I was little, he was really big and strong to me and he would push me really high on the swing. And I loved that because I felt like I was flying. In fact, one day I felt so much like I was flying, I thought to myself, if I let go of the swing, I think I could fly, probably over to the slide, then whiz down it, do some kind of amazing somersault, and I'd look really cool. So I got higher and higher and higher. And then I let go. And for about 3 seconds of my 5-year-old life, I flew, and it was amazing. And then, like this stone, I dropped, hit my head flat on the concrete, broke my nose, which is still broken to this day. My dad scooped me up and ran all the way to A&E with me, and he sat there as I snotted and bled and cried my eyes out in the hospital. And he held my hand and he looked at me and he told me everything was going to be all right. And then from his pocket, he produced a daisy that he had picked at the park, and he gave it to me. And he said, just like this daisy, don't worry about your nose. You will be beautiful again. And that's the story of me and my dad at the play park. So I share a really simple story, and it's only 90 seconds long, and it is true. And I think it's really important that it's true, because kids can spot a mile off if you're not authentic, if you're not telling them something that's real. And that story is quite special to me. So it's quite a nice story to share with children. And also it happened to me when I was little. So if you can find a story that wasn't, you know, you backpacking in India at 21, but actually something when you were kind of at their level, that really helps them engage. After that, you're going to break them up into those big groups, and they're going to sit in those big groups. And I usually give them about 10 to 15 minutes to think about and prepare their story. So some of that 15 minutes, you want to give them 5 minutes maybe to jot down a few ideas, 5 minutes to chat to the person next to them about the kind of story they're going to tell, and then 5 minutes to try sharing their story without looking at their book. And then at the end of that, you're going to get each person in each group, you're going to give them a stone, or you could use, I don't know, straws or anything you've got in your classroom. It's just nice to be able to identify the storyteller. It really helps that child feel that they've got that moment, which is quite nice, especially in primary level. So you're going to get that person to stand up just in their little circle, and you're going to count down from 3, 2, 1, go. And what happens in that moment is 5 people will all be talking at the same time. And it's genius because they will be sharing to a slightly larger audience, but they've got the camouflage of other people also talking. So you're building that confidence, you're getting them up in front of a slightly bigger audience, they're sharing a story with no notes. They're starting to feel like, wow, look at me, everyone's watching me and it doesn't feel too bad. I feel quite good about this. And the reason it works is because it's not the whole class looking at them. At the end of everyone sharing their stories, what I usually do is I say, right, I want you to have a 60-second discussion now and decide what's the best story you heard. What story do you think everyone should hear? So then they have a little thing, and I make it like a competition between the groups. So you're going to now choose someone to rep your group, and then we're going to have a little vote with just applause to decide what the best story of the day was. And then you get 1 or 2 people from each group who'll share their story with the whole class, which is great. They're usually the slightly more able kids, but that's fine because you need that demonstration in front of the whole class because it shows the others that it's possible and nothing bad happens to people when they stand up and speak. So it's quite an important thing to do. Then I usually do a kind of applause. What do you call it in the old, a clapometer? I usually do like a clapometer. And then I always do the bit where I'm like, you know, I kind of fudge it and say, oh my God, everyone got the same amount of applause. Everyone's so good. It's really hard to decide. I tell you what, you're all winners. Well done for standing up, blah, blah, blah. It's brilliant. And you're all going to get the chance to stand up and deliver a speech after lunch. And then at that point, that's usually the point where if outside isn't suitable for the competition part, that's a good point to move them inside. But all of those beginning bits are really good to do outside because they don't really involve very much writing, but the construction of the speech can involve some written work. So it's quite a good idea then to get them inside at that point. That's the speech builder story. And then we start working on your topics. So then we start thinking about, they have their lunch, and then we start thinking about what they're going to talk about. And one of the things I do is in your teacher pack, you'll get a template of a tree. So that's quite a nice thing to do because it reinforces what it is we really want to be talking about today. We want to be talking about nature. We are speaking up for trees. We are speaking up about the environment. And on that template, so I would put that template up, or sometimes I just draw it freehand on the whiteboard. And I get them to tell me all the things about nature that they love, all the things that they think people should know more about, all the things they think matter that don't get spoken about enough, all the things that are special about where they live, that are connected to nature. So what have you got round here? Because I'm quite lucky, because if I go into somewhere, I'm a stranger to the area. So it gives me something to talk about. I can automatically say, tell me about round here. Have you got any rivers or streams or trees? Where do you all go? What do you all do? What's good to do around here if I want to be out in nature? And what we'll do is we'll do a big a big group share of all the different topics that are connected to nature. And it'll be kind of like the foliage on the branches of the tree, which is really quite nice. And then they have to decide which one of those they're going to talk about. So I usually get them to talk to the person next to them and come up with 2 things from the big tree that they think they could talk about. So either something that they know a bit about or something that they care about. They're the 2 main things to focus on. Don't choose something from the tree that you don't know anything about or you're not really bothered about. It's much easier to stand up and talk if you care a bit and you know a little bit about it. So that kind of narrows it down a bit for some of them. Some of them will know lots of things about lots of subjects. So it really depends on the child. But remember, we're trying to reach everyone in the room. So that's really important. And on the topic generator page, which is on your screens at the moment, you can see we've got the purposes for speaking. And they're just a really useful thing for you to have as a teacher. So once they've chosen their topic, you need to help them decide, what do they want to do with this speech? Do they want to inspire people to go out and pick up litter? That's been quite a big theme actually this year, litter picking, which has been quite good. Do they want to be really informative? So have they chosen to do a speech just on the beautiful English oak, and they want to tell us lots of facts about the lovely English oak? So it could just be a big information speech. Do they want to entertain us? So some children will say, Miss, the story that I told, can I make that into a speech? Because that story was really good. And I always say, yes, you can turn that into a speech because that's entertaining. You can entertain an audience. I've got no problem with that. Or you could persuade an audience. Maybe they want the school, maybe they want to have more recycling at the school and they want to persuade an audience to kind of vote for that. Or maybe they're sharing something personal. So again, that's connected to the story. So once you've helped them decide, and this is just manual going around working with the students, I'm afraid there's no other way to do it. You have to just kind of chat to them. Some won't need any help at all. Some will just be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm going to write about, and they'll pick their topics quite easily. Others will need a bit of assistance. Once you've read the room, and in your case that's much easier because you know the room, you know these kids, you will know who's going to fly and who's going to need a bit more help, and that makes this bit of your day a bit easier than it would be for us, because we're sort of trying to analyze that situation at the same time with a bit of teacher support. In the very back of their books then is this, and this is their Speak Out, this is their speech builder. So this tells them exactly what we're looking for from each part of the speech, and the top part of that is the topic. The second part is what is the message for the audience. So those top 2 parts, they're not going to say out loud, they're just for their information, and this is all in your teacher pack. The opening, so what is the opening needs to hook the audience. So at this point I will, for a primary, I would write some sentence starters up on the board. I'm just going to get rid of that so that you don't have that distracting you, because then I can just talk to you. Fabulous. I'm just, there we go, stop that share, fantastic. I'll go back to that in a second. So I'm going to give you these sentence starters. So in terms of notes that you've been making today, these are the ones we don't have slides for because they're individual to each trainer. So I'm just going to help you out by giving you some of the ones I use. And for children that struggle with literacy or struggle with actually thinking about how to put a sentence together, these really help. And again, you'll have some children that just know what to do. Like if you say to them, start with a rhetorical question, they'll go yes, or they might not. So what I would write is imagine ... So you could start your speech with the word imagine. Imagine a world where there were no trees. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow, you opened your door and the street was full of rubbish. imagine never being able to see a forest. So I give them some examples of how they could start, and imagine's a really nice one because that's painting pictures in the audience's head. So that's a good way to hook an audience. Another one might be, you could ask the audience a question. How would you feel if I told you that the ocean is full of more plastic than fish? How would you feel if there were no more trees? How would you feel if the playground that you love wasn't there for your children? So you could use that. How would you feel? That's a nice way to start as well. So that's 2. And then the other one I use is the bold statement. So you could just make a bold statement. So this usually involves saying something about the subject that they're talking about. So let's say they're talking about recycling, or they're talking about deforestation. That's quite a popular topic in Speaking Up for Trees. Lots of kids go for kind of, you know, chopping down trees and animals and the environment and how animals' habitats are being ruined, especially little kids, because they love that animal connection. They love talking about animals, which is really sweet. So a bold statement might be something like, by the time I finish this speech, 25 more species won't exist. My speech is 90 seconds long. So that's a bold statement. That makes the audience go, whoa, okay, that's awful. So bold statements are usually the ones that make the audience go, blimey, I didn't know that. How would you feel, or what would you think, or what would you do if, for the rhetorical starters, and then imagine. And I'll only put those 3 up because I don't want to spoon feed too much. So I give them those little ones to help the ones that struggle. And what you will find is that 30% of your class might use those, 70% will just come up with their own, which is great, because that's what we want. We want to help the kids that can't manage, and we want the kids that are just going to fly to feel that they've got the freedom to do that. So I will say, they're there to use, and if you don't want to use them, I don't mind. I'm interested in what you have to say. And if you want to use one of those to start, that's great. And then I'll get them to write their opening sentence. So I really break it down in primary. I don't just say, I don't show them everything and then say, right, now you've got half an hour. I get them to do each stage. So then they write their openings, and I usually give them 5 minutes to write an opening sentence. And then I'll get a few people to volunteer to read them out and tell them how brilliant they are. It's that simple. And then in the body of the speech, which is the middle part, they only need to make 3 points. It's very basic. The first point, and again, this isn't written in the book, but it's really sensible to have this bit of armory in your pack. So the first point, and it's labeled on the book, just 1, 2, 3. So 1 is, why are you talking about this? So that's their chance to tell a story about why the oak tree matters to them, about why recycling is important to them and make it personal, about why the ocean is important to them and make it personal. So that's the first thing they need to do. Make it personal. Why does it matter to you? The second thing is, why should it matter to us? So why should the audience care? So once you've told us why it matters to you, well, why should we care about orangutans in the jungle? Why should we care about lemurs in Madagascar? Why should we care about chopping down the Brazilian rainforest? Why should we care about looking after our local parks and our local green spaces? Why should we care about that? And usually children they're not, you know, they're so clever, they will just come up with their own ideas. So it will, and you get a combination of, we should care about it because being in green spaces makes me feel nice. We should care about it because if we didn't have trees, we wouldn't have clean air, and we wouldn't have nice places to sit and have picnics, and that's why they're important. So let them come up with their own reasons. We don't want it to be too grown up. It needs to come from them, but point them in the right direction, just in terms of what we need from each point. So the first point is, why are you talking about this? Why does it matter to you? Second point, why should we care? And the third point is there anything we can do about it? What would you like us to do about it? So tell the audience what you would like. So would you like them to go and pick up more litter? Would you like them to come on a climate change demonstration? Would you like them to watch this brilliant documentary that you saw with David Attenborough? What do you want from your audience? What would you like your audience to do? That's quite a nice thing, because then it gives the audience something to kind of take a bit of action from, and it gives them a point to reach in their body. So when I've written those 3 points on the board, I don't give them any sentence openers for this, because although I help them with the opening, this really needs to be their voice. That's really important. So I just put those on the board, and then I will give them 15 minutes to write the body of their speech. And I will say to them, just write 1 or 2 sentences on each part. That's enough. Because we don't want them to get into a situation where it becomes a test of their memory. We just want them to write a couple of sentences that are going to help them stand up and speak. So after they've done that, I might get them to share a bit of that with each other. So I don't get them to share that one with the whole class. I just say, okay, share the body of your speech with the person next to you. Or I might set a timer. That sometimes works quite well. And I might say, all right, you've got 5 minutes to share the body of your speech with 3 people that you haven't spoken to yet today. And then they have to go around and find 3 people that they don't normally speak to and just read out the body of their speech and see what that feels like. And that's quite nice. Again, psychologically, you're prepping them for speaking in front of the whole class. It's all very manipulative, but all for a good cause. But it's all, and then, so they've got their opening and they've got their body. And that's probably taken you about 20 minutes, which is brilliant. And then you've got your closing. So the closing is the most important part, because it's your message for your audience. So what do you want your final thing to be that the audience remember you saying? It could be a challenge. I challenge you all today. It could be my message for you today is. It could be, if you remember one thing, this is what I'd like. So you can help them a little bit by just saying those sentences, but I don't usually write these ones up, because some of them have already got an idea of where they're going. Some will have even written their last bit as part of the body. They'll just be like, oh, I'm just moving on, which is fine. And then I'll give them 5 minutes to just write their message, write their last sentence, and repeat what I did with the start, which is get them to share it with a couple of other people or the whole class at that point. And then they need to practice. So practicing their speech, the easiest way to practice a speech is to find a partner and to use your book and to read your speech out to your partner, and then give your partner your book. So swap books, and then have another go at doing your speech without your book, but don't panic, because your partner is there and they can tell you if you mess up, or if you need a bit of help, or if you missed a bit out. And the other great thing is your partner can tell you if it makes sense. Because the first time you say it out loud, you might think, oh God, that's not really what I meant. That's not what I meant to say. I meant to say this. So it's lovely to say it out loud. So I get them to do that for about 5 or 6 minutes. I don't like to over practice, because I like to spend time prepping them for the speech. And in terms of like just doing a couple of exercises that calm them down and center them a little bit. So I'll share those with you now. So once they've done their practice and we're all good to go, and I don't move the chairs into a particular audience or anything that's intimidating, I just keep that horseshoe shape that we've had for the day that they're used to working in. Just a circle is absolutely fine. And I always with primary children, I give them a choice. They can come out the front, or they can stand up where they are. But I do always try and encourage them to stand up at the very least. But if they want to stand up in their spot, I'm fine with that. This is not about making people feel uncomfortable. It's about empowering them to speak. And some will be desperate to stride to the front, and others just won't. And that's fine. There's no kind of hierarchy. Everyone gets a round of applause. That's really important. So that's the next thing I do. So I say, right, we're all going to put our books down, and I want everybody to stand up. And everybody stands up, and then I say, and I want you to take off your shoes. This is just what I do. You don't have to do this, but it works really well. So I get them to take off their shoes, so they're standing in their socks on the carpet, and I just say, and I want you to just close your eyes, and I want you to feel the ground beneath your feet. Can you feel it? Wiggle your toes about. Go on your tiptoes and lower your heels, and can you feel the ground beneath your feet? Now I want you to imagine that your feet are the bottom of your tree trunk, and they are planted firmly on the ground. So you are not going to shake your legs. You are not going to be nervous, because you've got this brilliant foundation, these fantastic feet grounded into the earth like the trunk of a tree. And then I say, okay, open your eyes. And then they all open their eyes. And then I say, so what are we going to do with our arms? Let's join our fingers together. And then I just get them to stretch up and out. And I said, I want you to make the canopy of your tree. And they spread their arms to the sides. And I say, okay, imagine there's a little breeze. And we're going to blow around in the wind a little bit. And they all start moving a little bit. And it just totally takes their mind off the fact they're going to get up and speak, which is really nice. So they all move a little bit and then they move their branches. And then I say, let's create our own wind. So let's create our own breeze around our tree. So let's join our hands together again. And this time we're going to breathe in through our nose. And as we breathe out, we're going to make a lovely shh sound as though we're telling the whole world to be quiet and listen to us. So we're going to breathe in. We're going to open those canopies. Shh. Feel the wind as the shush goes around the room. And then I do that about 4 or 5 times with them. And they think they're being trees, but what it's doing is it's steadying their heart rate, slowing it down a little bit, centering them, stopping them feeling nervous. So it just regroups because they get all tense. They've been running around the room, sharing their speeches with each other. And so there's a kind of frisson in the room that needs to be brought down. And then it's brought down. And then we share our speeches. And that's kind of, that's how it works when I do it. And it all works really well, I have to say. I don't think it's any particular magic that I'm doing. I think the structure of the program's brilliant. But I've given you a few extra things because all trainers add their own little bits in order to kind of make it work. But I have a drama background, so a lot of the stuff I do is drama based. One little top tip I'll give you in terms of selection, because usually at this point teachers, if I was a teacher, I'd be thinking, well, how do you decide who goes first? So when they're prepping their speeches and you're going around helping them, it's really easy to spot the child that's kind of probably going to be okay going first and get them to volunteer. So say, how would you be up for going first? Usually you're fine. You might ask 2 or 3, but one of them will go, yeah, I'll go first, and they'll be fine. You might at this point as well in speech preparation have a couple of children who approach you and just say, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't know. I can't get up. And that can happen whether they're 6 or 7 or 15. Everyone can have that moment of wobble. So what I do at that point is I say, okay, I'm not going to make you do anything that you don't want to do, because that's not what today is about. And you've done loads of speaking today, and I think you should be really proud of yourself. And I'm really proud of all the things that you've done today. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to still get you to do all the practice, because that's still speaking, and it means lots of people in this room are going to hear your speech. That's brilliant. And then we're going to do a little bit of a breathing exercise. So I'd like you to do that with everybody. And if at the end, I'll put you right at the very end, and if at the end you still don't want to do it, that's fine. And people not doing it has never happened to me. So what tends to happen is when I get to the end and I say, let's say the little girl's name's Abigail or something, I might just say, so Abigail, are you up for it? And she might just go, I say, how about if you could read it from your book? Do you know what, Abigail? You don't even have to stand up. You could do it from there. I'll come and sit next to you. 9 times out of 10, they will do it. And they are the children for whom it makes a massive difference. They are the children who will go home really feeling like they've achieved something, because you will have the children that can do it with their eyes closed and their hands tied behind their back, but it's the children that struggle. That's who the difference is made to on the day. So you don't need to pressure them, but it's worth pursuing it. It's worth putting them in a space where they feel like, how can we make this work for you? I'll stand next to you. I mean, I've even stood up with a child and started reading it, you know, and I've stood up and said, you know, you'll need to stand next to me because I'm really rubbish at reading handwriting, because I'm not a teacher. So you'll have to help me. You'll have to come up with a better excuse than that, because you are teachers. You'll have to say something else. Say you forgot your glasses or something. So if you can help me, and then I'll start reading, and then I'll just say, what does that bit say? And before they know it, they're reading the whole thing, and I just move away and they just deliver their speech. So there's lots of little ways you can get them to do it. And I do realize that as a teacher, your relationship with them is very different, which can have its pros and cons, because the pro could be, you know them really well, so you maybe know how to get them into that situation. The con is they know you really well, so they might know how to make sure they don't have to do it. So Claire's looking at with that face of knowledge. Yeah. The whole point of the day is not to make people feel uncomfortable. The whole point of the day is not to make any child feel like that was an absolutely dreadful day. I really wish that they hadn't made me speak. So if you've got an absolute refuse Nick, that's completely fine. That's obviously not going to be someone that goes through as one of your 5 anyway, you will just let that child go. That's fine. They'll still have got so much out of the day, so much. And that's absolutely fine. It's terrible to take them to that final spot where they really can't do it. So I would never force a child to speak who couldn't speak. I just have all these different little techniques, and it ends up that they end up speaking without even really thinking about it, which is obviously that's the bonus. If that happens, that's really good. Okay, I know I have talked so long, but this is very different from the workshop we normally run, where you guys do a lot of the activities, but I really wanted to maximize the time in terms of actually talking you through them. And I wanted to make sure you had enough time at the end to ask me any questions that you might have, Claire or Katie, about how you can take this forward, or anything that wasn't clear. So I'm going to hand over to you guys. If you've got any questions, do ask.
Thank you, Jenny. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sorry I've sort of been dipping in and out, but I have been listening.
No, it's fine.
I've been making lots of notes as well. So I'm just wondering whether I would be able to book one of you to come and speak at our school, and how can I do that? Because I'm not quite sure whether I've missed something or
you haven't missed something, but
yeah, we've allocated the workshops have been allocated for this year, so that
right, okay,
training is
fine.
You run it within your school. So for you, Katie, what I'd recommend is that you share this recording with a teacher at the school, so that they can run this day, and maybe you can attend the day as well, and support, so that they can run this day in the school with the class that they're working with, or with your eco champions, or whatever works for your school. But this will help you to run the day, and Jenny's given us so many amazing tips there. Thank you, Jenny.
I'd like to do it now.
Exactly. So that's kind of the point of it. So then you can share it with a teacher and run the day in your school, if that makes sense.
Lovely.
And I don't know, Julia, is it running again next year?
Yeah, it
is. So Katie, it's running again next year. I don't know what age your children are, but if you had a go at running it this year, then hopefully next year you won't miss the allocation, and you can book a trainer to come in and do it with a different class.
No, that would be great. Yes. Well, I mean, my children, my son is just in reception, and my daughter's going to follow on next year. So I'm sort of at the beginning of the school, and I'm kind of working out how to get more involved. So I think that'd be really good. We'd definitely be ready for it next year. Thank you.
Good. Claire, how was that? Did that make sense? Are you kind of happy?
That really it does make sense. It's really good to have your extra notes as well. So have those been sent out, those packs? Is that right?
They come from the tree councils. They haven't been sent out yet. They'll be sent out as and when you need them, I think.
Yeah, we'll send them out following this. So now that you've had the training and understand a little bit more about it, we'll send you that information.
Yeah, because then I can put the notes onto that as well, so that'll be handy. So I'm not quite sure how many classes are going to take part in it yet, but hopefully we'll get quite a few involved. I think, coming from a drama background, I think you're probably better suited to this as well. It should be a really good day.
I mean, it's a great day. It is a really good day, and even if you don't have a trainer there, it's so well structured, and in your teacher pack, like I said, you've got all the timings, and you'll see yourself with your experience, Claire. You'll see yourself already things that probably aren't going to take as long as we've given them for, and that's when you can say, oh, I'll do that stick game that Jenny said, or I'll spend 5 minutes calming them down with that breathing. And so that's why I always try and give you a few extra things, because the day, the day is the day, but it's nice to have the extra things to make it feel like it's a non-school day in that sense.
Yeah. So at the end of it, do we just then do the one that we've chosen, we do a recording and send it to you? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so that's your final entry, and you'll record that and then submit it on the website. There's a form, and you can just attach it there. And then if you want to, you can showcase the top 5. So we suggest having top 5, and then so kind of running 2 heats, so that you have the top 5, and then out of that you choose your national finalist that you submit to the Tree Council's competition. But the other entries, please do showcase them. You could put them onto your website and send us a link and put it on the club space, post it on the club space, so we can all see them, and share it in your newsletter. It's really celebrate it and share the incredible speeches that will be produced.
Yeah, do you know, is it just a speech or can they actually do a song as well?
So for this particular thing, it is a speech, it's spoken word. So it is really important that it's public speaking. And that's why in particular, they've partnered with us at Speakers Trust.
Yeah.
I think there are other competitions that do different things, but this is particularly a speech.
Right, that's fine. Just, I know I'm going to get somebody that'll ask if they can do a rap or something to it.
Oh, I always get that. Well, especially with the secondary schools, actually. It's quite lucky because we do another thing that is a spoken word competition for secondary schools. So it's quite a nice, I can always just say, we do one of those, but it's not this one today. So you need to get your school to book the other one if you want to do the other one.
That's great. All right, yeah, thank you.
Brilliant.
Really
I'm
helpful.
so glad that that was helpful.
Are there any other questions? Are you okay, Katie? Do you have any questions?
Oh, look, there she is.
Hi.
A lovely little person. Hi, Katie. It's
Sorry,
nice to
this
see your
one.
face.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, you'd been sort of looking out the window.
Oh, it's fine.
No worries.
No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and I'm glad I joined in. Thanks for all the useful information.
Pleasure.
Would you recommend that the teacher does it on a class by class basis, or would you have a larger group? Or
So I wouldn't have more than
Class.
your average primary school class doing the workshop because it'll just be chaos, and also
Yeah.
the timings are designed for that 30. But
Right.
you could have 5 classes doing it on 5 different days with 5
I
different teachers.
yeah, just run
That's
it
not a problem.
in session. Yeah.
Or you could mix the age groups depending on the experience of the teacher. Some schools have an eco club that ranges across the age groups, and they do it with their eco club because obviously it's speaking up for trees.
Yeah, so we have
but-
an eco club, and I was wondering whether that might be something we could do there.
Yeah.
But it's only got, there's one child per class, so it's a small club. Would that still be worthwhile doing, do you think?
So
Or
how
we
many classes have you got?
it's just reception to year 6
So you've got 7 classes.
classes.
So
Yeah,
could
so
they
it's-
maybe do 1 eco warrior plus 2
Mm,
friends
Friends.
from each class? Yeah.
yes, I
Because
suppose so,
actually, I
yeah.
think putting a reception child in on their own,
Mm,
maybe a reception child and a couple of their pals, and then a year
Yeah.
2 and a couple of their pals, and then you would have the 30 that you need. You could do
Yeah,
it like
sure.
that.
yeah, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, lovely.
And if you do have any questions, Katie, or if whoever's running it, if you're not running it, please do just make an email, schools@treecouncil.co.uk.org.uk, sorry, and we can always answer any
Yeah.
questions if there's specific ones nearer the time when
Yeah.
you're running it.
That's great. Okay, lovely. Thanks very much. Yeah, super. We'll keep you posted.
Good luck.
Yeah,
Thank
wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was
Pleasure.
absolutely
Always a
brilliant.
pleasure, Juliet. Lovely to see you.
Yeah,
I'm just telling
incredible.
Juliet I put my heating on, which is shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm cozied up.
It's so cold.
It's chilly.
That
Yeah.
was
got
really
blanket.
brilliant.
Blanket. That's what I should have got. I'm going to turn it off now. I'm really hot now. I've been doing it for talking for an hour.
That time of year, isn't it?
Definitely. And yeah, just a huge thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Claire and Katie, for coming too. As you said, I'll echo you, Katie. I want to go and run it, and I'm very glad that Richard and I own schools next week, because there's just so many tips there: how to deal with wobbles, those breathing exercises, how to inspire and empower the students. It's just, thank you, so many tips.
Pleasure.
That was really, really brilliant. So thank you very much, Jenny. And yeah, we will share the recording with you and those packs. And if you do have any questions, then please do ask. And we look forward to seeing the competition entries. So,
Yes.
So do
Can't
we.
wait.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Good luck, guys.
Bye.
Brilliant. Thank you
Bye.
so much. Have a great evening,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye,
You too.
Juliet.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Take care. Thanks, Jenny.